defines crunch time as a critical moment or period, like the end of a game, when decisive action is needed. Every sports fan knows this time in the game. Your palms sweat just a little more, your heart races just a little bit faster, and you live and die with every play until the final seconds tick off the clock and you're either celebrating a victory or disappointed by the defeat. The team at Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network understands just how critical these moments are. For us, it begins as soon as the next set of games are on the board. We evaluate the opening lines and any breaking news throughout the week. We cover each game inside and out, whether it's from inside the locker room to a huddle down on the field, the court, or the ice. We take you inside the meeting room with scouts, coaches, and executives. We have our fingers on the pulse of all the sports that we cover: the National Hockey League, NBA, college basketball, college football, and the National Football League. We are the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network, and we're here to help you find your sports advantage. After all the data has been crunched, we then turn it over to Kenneth for the best analysis around. His unique perspective in both understanding the data and how it applies to the game and how you win is the Crunch Time Sports Advantage. Are you ready? The Crunch Time Jet is fueled and ready for takeoff, and the Crunch Time Express is about to leave the station. Your VIP pass has been approved, so all aboard.
Hey there, football fans. Welcome back to another unforgettable weekend of college football, right here on the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network. I'm Summer, and I'll be your guide through every thrilling moment college football has to offer. The players and coaches to watch, the great rivalries, and the chase for the college football playoff is on. I will be joined by my fantastic co-hosts, Jessica, Billy, and Kenneth. Whether you're out tailgating with friends, firing up the grill, or lounging in your favorite game day gear, we're bringing you everything you need to feel like you are a part of the action. From deep dive analysis and under the radar teams to weather updates that could change the game, we've got it all covered. And if this is your first time tuning in, welcome to the family. At the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network, we're here to give you that winning edge, sharp insights, hard-hitting stats, and plenty of college football vibes to keep you locked in the whole season long. So grab your seat because we've got a packed show ahead. It's already week 12 of the college football season, and teams are heading into the home stretch. The playoff race is tightening, and every game from here on out is crucial. We've got another exciting week ahead with some great matchups to dive into. We've got 5 featured games this week, each with its own storyline and playoff implications. First up, we head to the Mountain West for Boise State versus San Jose State. Boise State is aiming to stay in the hunt for a conference title, but San Jose State is a tough opponent and could play spoiler. This one could be a nail-biter as both teams look to build momentum. Next, we've got Arizona State taking on Kansas State. The Wildcats have been strong all season, but Arizona State's been showing signs of life in recent weeks. Can the Sun Devils continue their momentum, or will Kansas State prove they're a top contender? In the American Conference, Tulane faces Navy in what promises to be a hard-fought game. Tulane has been one of the surprise teams this year, but Navy's triple option offense is always a challenge for any defense. This one could come down to which team can control the clock and dictate the pace. Over in the ACC, Clemson takes on Pitt. Clemson's been a little up and down this season, but they'll be looking to finish strong. Pitt, on the other hand, has been known for its tough defense, so it'll be interesting to see if they can keep up with Clemson's offensive firepower. And finally, our game of the week, Tennessee versus Georgia. This is a huge SEC matchup with major playoff implications. Both teams are jockeying for position, and this one could go a long way in deciding who makes it to the college football playoff. Expect fireworks in this one as 2 of the conference's best go head-to-head. That's the lineup for Week 12. We'll break down each of these games, look at the key matchups, and discuss what's at stake for each team. Stay with us, it's going to be another thrilling week of college football.
Thanks, Summer. Let's take a look at the weather conditions for our featured games this weekend. It's November, so we're starting to see everything from thunderstorms to chilly evenings on the forecast. First up, we have San Jose State hosting Boise State with a 6 p.m. kickoff. The temperature will be a chilly 42 degrees, with clear skies expected for the game. It's going to be a crisp evening, so make sure to bundle up if you're heading to the game. In Manhattan, Arizona State faces Kansas State with a 6 p.m. kickoff. Expect a mild evening with temperatures around 47 degrees. We could see some increasing cloud cover as the night goes on, and wind gusts up to 18 miles per hour. No rain is expected, but the wind could definitely play a factor in this game. Over in Annapolis, Navy hosts Tulane with an 11 a.m. kickoff. The temperature will start at 55 degrees, but it's going to be windy with winds coming from the northwest at 18 miles per hour. Wind gusts could reach up to 40 miles per hour, which will make throwing the ball very challenging. Fans will want to brace themselves for a blustery day. In Pittsburgh, Clemson faces Pitt with an 11 a.m. kickoff. It's going to be a pleasant start to the day, with temperatures around 57 degrees and partial sunshine. However, there will be some wind gusts reaching up to 15 miles per hour, so fans may feel a bit of a chill during the game. And finally, in Athens, Tennessee takes on Georgia with a 6:30 p.m. kickoff in our game of the week. The temperature will be around 58 degrees, and it's going to be a clear, beautiful evening for football. It's shaping up to be perfect weather for this important conference showdown. That's your weather rundown for this weekend's games. We've got a mix of chilly evenings, windy conditions, and clear skies, so be sure to check the forecast and dress accordingly for game day. Now, I'll send it over to our senior handicapping analyst, Billy.
Thanks, Jessica. Let's dive into the opening lines and see where the money is going for our featured games this week. First up, Boise State opened as a 13-point road favorite against San Jose State. The Broncos are getting 49% of the handle and 88% of the bets. Despite the spread, most of the betting action is heavily favoring Boise State to cover, which suggests confidence in the Broncos' ability to win big on the road. Next, Kansas State opened as an 8-point home favorite against Arizona State. The Wildcats are drawing 74% of the handle and 71% of the bets. It looks like bettors are backing Kansas State to cover at home, with the majority of the bigger money going in their favor, showing confidence in their home field advantage. In the American, Tulane opened as a 7-point road favorite against Navy. The Green Wave are seeing 89% of the handle and 68% of the bets. This is a big gap, with the majority of the larger bets supporting Tulane to cover, though there's still some action on Navy as the underdog. Over in the ACC, Clemson opened as a 10-point road favorite against Pitt. The Tigers are getting 10% of the handle and only 38% of the bets. This is a significant difference between the money and the number of bets, suggesting that while most bettors are leaning toward Pitt, the larger wagers are still backing Clemson to cover on the road. And finally, in our game of the week, Georgia opened as a 10-point home favorite against Tennessee. The Bulldogs are drawing 54% of the handle and 73% of the bets. It's clear that the public is favoring Georgia to cover, though Tennessee has been a strong competitor, so this could be a tightly contested game. And Summer, as I send it back over to you. So we've got some interesting line movements and betting trends this week, with heavy action on both sides. Some of these spreads may shift as more bets come in, but it looks like it's going to be another thrilling weekend for college football betting. Let's see if the favorites hold or if we're in for some surprises.
Thanks, Billy, and as always, shop for the best number. And now, folks, it's time for the moment you've all been waiting for. We're bringing in the man, the myth, the legend, the voodoo child himself, Kenneth. When it comes to breaking down matchups, nobody does it better. So sit back, relax, and let Kenneth work his magic. Cue up a little Jimi Hendrix, because it's time for the best breakdowns in the business. Kenneth, take it away.
And welcome into the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network. This is the Crunch Time Express. Founder and senior analyst here for the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network. And I want to just say to my fantastic team, tremendous job with the lead in this week. 5 games this week, so we really wanted to give all of our viewers and listeners a little bit more in depth this week. So great job, Jessica, Summer, as always, doing the co-hosting duties. Billy, as always, doing a great job of setting the data as far as our handicapping numbers go. You guys do a great job of leading off the show. I'm here to just drive it in now. And before we get underway with this week's 5 games, as you can see, if you're watching on YouTube or streaming us on Twitter, 5 interesting games this week. I'm looking forward to getting into each and every one of those matchups. But before we get started, we're going to take a look at our top 25 this week. Once again, real quickly, and then we'll just talk briefly over what we saw from the committee on Tuesday night, and then what we had on our show on Monday night. If you haven't already done so, I absolutely encourage you to go back and listen to that podcast on any of your podcasting platforms. We really went in depth on where we thought these teams would be slotted. We'll touch on that briefly here in just a moment. So, Jessica, if you can cue up the next slide for me. Thank you. Okay. So for all of you watching on YouTube or listening I'm sorry, or Twitter, you'll see this on the screen. I'll run through it really quickly here. And if you can cue me up a little music here. Coming in at number 25, Texas A&M Aggies, and we're going to run it from 25 to 21. Tulane checks in at number 24. James Madison at 23. Kansas State 21. Kansas State 22. Pitt 21. UNLV at number 20. Washington State, Clemson, Louisiana. Iowa State and Ole Miss comes in at number 15. 14, Georgia. Boise State at 13. SMU at 12. Alabama at 11. Top 10, Army, Penn State, Tennessee, Miami, Notre Dame. Getting that top 5, BYU, Ohio State, Texas, Indiana, and Oregon. And now let's take a brief look at where we had our rankings and then what the committee has. And folks, the only thing I'm looking at is the top 13 or so. Really top 14 because you got to include the group of 5 champion in there. So if you look at our top 14 and look at the committee's top 14, we basically have the same teams. We just have them in a different orders. Now, the top 3 are identical. We both have Oregon 1, Ohio State 2, and Texas 3. We have Notre Dame checking in at number 4. The committee has Penn State. We have Alabama at 5 based on that strength of schedule and that dominant win over LSU. Really built up the resume. The committee has Alabama at 10. No worries with that. We have Ole Miss at number 6. Committee has Ole Miss at 11. We're okay with that. We have Indiana at 7. The committee has them at 5. No worries with that whatsoever. We have BYU at 8. They have BYU at 6. We both have Miami at number 9. As I mentioned, they have Alabama at 10. We have Penn State at 10. Strength of schedule reasons for that. We have Tennessee at 11. They have Tennessee at number 7. Going to be talking about the Vols here in just a minute. We both have Georgia at number 12. Now, we have SMU at 13. They have SMU at 14. And we basically flip-flop Boise State. They have Boise State at 13. We have Boise at 14. So we have our formula as far as kind of being able to build on what the committee is going to do and what we have. So we feel like we got the process right. Those 14 teams all in contention. We absolutely hit that right on the head there. So great job by my team, Jessica, Summer, and Billy for putting in a very strenuous weekend, getting that model updated. Let's take a look at what we did last week, folks. 10-5 last week, up 5 units. If you listen to us and you're a part of the team here, we gave you Ole Miss to not only cover the 2.5, told you to take them on the money line, and if you had it available in your markets, to take Ole Miss by -3 in that ball game. We were very comfortable with our numbers. Our numbers had the Rebels as a 5-point favorite there at home. Nobody wanted to believe us until they saw the final score. And that final score should have been a little bit more lopsided than what it was. We'll take that. BYU did not get home for us as far as being able to cover that 3-point spread in that rivalry game. Credit Utah for playing tough in the first half. Could not score a point in the second half. BYU needed a last-second field goal to close that game out and get the win. On the season, 117, 69-1. Folks, we're hitting at a 63% clip. There's not a handicapper in America or in the world that would not take a 63% win percentage. You see what we're up as far as the units go? We're getting it done. Let's talk about the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network. This is the Crunch Time Express. Our first contest, we're going to head out to California. Boise State versus San Jose State. Let's get into this game here for the full context here. Boise State comes into this game 8-1. San Jose State 6-3. Let's take a look at the breakdown here. that Boise State offense, we always like to start with the road team's offense. Boise State comes in averaging 37 points per game. And that is ninth best in the country using our formula. San Jose State not doing a great job of keeping opponents out of the scoring column there, giving up 31 points a game. That's 102nd in the country right now. Boise State offense should find ample scoring opportunities in this ball game. And folks, while everybody, and we're no exception, talking about the fantastic running back there for Boise State, I'm going to give a little bit of credit to their quarterback here in Maddox Matson, the sophomore out of American Fork, Utah. What has this young man done on the season? Glad you asked. He's completing 62% of his passes, already thrown for 1,900 yards, averaging 7.8 yards per attempt. But here's the number that I love: 18 touchdowns, 3 INTs. You're not able to crowd the line of scrimmage there when you got a quarterback just being efficient in the ball game. Now, let's take a look at that Boise State passing offense here. They come in averaging 183 yards passing. Now, that's only 94th in the country. San Jose State is giving up a boatload of yards through the air, 288 yards through the air. Folks, that's 127th in the country. You want to protect your talented running back? Take some deep shots down the field against the San Jose team and not really have to wear down your talented running back. Speaking of that rushing game, Boise State ranks 3rd in the nation, averaging 261 yards per game rushing. San Jose State's defense, a little bit better than their pass defense, allowing 166 yards per game on the ground. That's 76. We expect that Boise State ground game to be a key advantage in this ball game, potentially dominating the time of possession. Folks, if you're new to the podcast, every game I'm going to talk about, we're always going to talk about that third down conversion rate. Boise State converts 47% on third down. San Jose, their opponents, converting almost 50% on third downs. Boise State efficiency on third down could allow them to sustain drives. And we know what happens when you sustain drives. You get into the green zone, get into the red zone, and eventually you find your way into the end zone. Let's talk about that San Jose State offense versus this Boise State defense. Found some interesting data points here. San Jose State's offense averaging about 22.5 points per game, good for 86th in the country, while a Boise State defense is allowing 25.1 points per game. That's 70th in the country. San Jose State may be challenged by that Boise State resilient defense, but let's see if we can't find some areas of opportunity for Boise State to take advantage of. And let's talk about their talented quarterback, Emmett Brown, sophomore out of San Marcos, California. What has this young man done for the season? Glad you asked. Now, only completing let's round it up, about 58% of his completions, 1,621 yards, 7.5 yards per attempt, 16 touchdowns, 5 INTs. So also doing a solid job of not turning the ball over as well. San Jose State's offense, passing wise, 6th in the country, averaging 322 yards per game passing. That is 6th best in the country. While Boise State's defense ranks 107th, allowing 244 yards passing per game. The San Jose State passing game could exploit that Boise State pass defense, posing a significant threat in this ball game. As far as the ground game goes, different story here, folks. San Jose State's rushing game ranks 131st, averaging only 84 yards per game on the ground, while this Boise State defense is allowing 132 yards per game on the ground. That's 33rd. We expect San Jose State to likely struggle a bit to establish a ground game against this Boise State solid run defense. San Jose, on San Jose State on third down, converting 38.5% on third down. Boise State, pretty much identical, allowing to their opponents 38.3. Third down efficiency will be critical for San Jose State to maintain drives against this Boise State defense. You do that by having real good play calling and execution on first and second down. A quick touch on the coaching matchup in this ball game. Spencer Danielson, he took over towards the end of the year for Boise State last year. So in 12 games as the head coach there, he's 11-1. In close games, he's winning 75% of those. And against quality opponents, he's 5-1 against quality opponents. Let's take a look on the other side of it here. San Jose State head coach Ken Niumatalolo used to be the former head coach there at the Naval Academy. Nine games under his belt right now. 6-3 record. In close games, he's only winning 33% of his close games. And San Jose State has only faced one quality opponent, and they lost that contest. Final thoughts on this ball game. Boise State has been effective in both phases of the offense, especially on the ground game. Defensively, they've been able to keep opponents in check, particularly against the run. For San Jose State's passing offense has been extremely productive, but their ground game has remained weak. Defensively, they've allowed significant yardage over the last few weeks, especially through the air, which could be a challenge against Boise State's balanced offense. We talked about where the point spread was sitting here. Let's just give some final thoughts in this contest. Boise State's powerful rushing attack and overall defensive edge positions them well to control this game. San Jose State's passing offense could present some challenges, but their struggle against the run and their average pass defense are areas where Boise State may be able to exploit them in this contest. I think it's going to be a fantastic matchup. We'll see if San Jose State can get off to an early lead, not fall behind, because we know if they fall behind, that talented running back is going to look to take control of this ball game. Our next contest is Arizona State Sun Devils heading to the Little Apple to take on Kansas State Wildcats. I like this matchup for a lot of different reasons there in the Big 12. One reason is both teams sit there with a 7-2 record. Critical matchup as both teams are looking to remain in the hunt, especially with Iowa State losing back-to-back weekends, has opened up the door for Arizona State, Kansas State, and Colorado to all make the Big 12 championship game. So that's why we're focusing in on this contest. Let's set the stage for this critical matchup there in the Big 12. Both teams looking to assert their dominance in this balanced contest. Arizona State's well-rounded attack meets a very disciplined Kansas State defense, while K-State's effective rushing attack will face a very steady defense there in Arizona State. I want to take a look at how these two teams stack up from our overall breakdown here. Let's talk about Arizona State. We just mentioned 7-2 on the year. Overall ranking for us is 28. Their power ranking, 33rd, and in our playoff committee, we have them 28th. For Kansas State, also 7-2. 22nd overall, 25th in the power rankings. And as far as our playoff committee rankings, we have them 20th. So this game presents to be a very tightly wounded contest here. let's get into the matchup here. And let's start with the visiting Arizona State Sun Devils. Head coach Kenny Dillingham doing a really fantastic job there. So let's get into it here. Arizona State averaging 29 points per game. That is 44th in the nation. When we take a look at that Kansas State defense, Kansas State averaging 17.6 points per game. Folks, that's 22nd in the country. Arizona State may find it challenging to reach their scoring average against this Kansas State solid defense. Let's take a look at the passing attack here. I think there may be something here that we need to monitor quite well in this contest. Arizona State averaging 202 passing yards per game. Now that's 78th in the country. While this K-State defense is allowing their opponents 218 yards passing, that's 71st in the nation. Arizona State could find some success through the air, though Kansas State's defense has managed to limit big plays in the passing game. Here's good on good here, folks. Arizona State ranks 31st in rushing, averaging 195 yards per game on the ground. They face a Kansas State defense that's giving up only 103 yards per game on the ground. That's good for 6th in the country. Kansas State elite rush defense could pose some problems in this contest for that Arizona State ground attack. As I always like to go to third down conversions here. Arizona State converting 47% on third downs, which means they're doing a fantastic job on early down success. Keep that in mind in this contest. While K-State's allowing their opponents to convert 33% on third down. Arizona State's ability to sustain drives may be hindered by that Kansas State strong third down defense. Let's take a look at the home team here. That Kansas State Wildcat offense versus that Arizona State Sun Devil defense. Kansas State comes in averaging 31 points per game, 35th in the nation, while Arizona State's defense is allowing 21 points per game. That's good for 43rd. This Kansas State scoring average aligns well with this Arizona State's defense. I think there could be something there from a defensive standpoint there for Arizona State. Let's take a look at the passing breakdown. K-State's passing game ranks 41st, averaging 238 yards per game through the air. They're going to face a Sun Devil defense that is only allowing 172 yards per game, good for 20th in the nation. Arizona State's pass defense may challenge that K-State's aerial attack. Not giving up the big shots down the field could be something that Arizona State will absolutely need to do in this contest. Rushing offense. When you got a dual threat quarterback and a very talented running back, you should be putting up fantastic numbers there. And boy, is Kansas State doing that. Ranks 14th in the country with 219 yards per game rushing. While this Arizona State defense, folks, 9th best in the country, only allowing 109 yards rushing per game. This will be the pivotal matchup as both Kansas State's rush offense and Arizona State's rush defense rank extremely high. Let's take a look at that third down conversion. Kansas State converts 42.5% on third down. Arizona State is allowing 33.3% on third downs. K-State may find it difficult to sustain those drives against this Arizona State third down defense. Let's talk about the coaching matchup here. For Arizona State, head coach Kenny Dillingham, coming over from the coaching staff there at Oregon, has been doing a fantastic job of rebuilding this Arizona State program. Rough first year, but has absolutely gotten it going this second year. In his 21 games since the start of last year's seasons, he's 10-11. So just one game under 500. In close games, Arizona's been in 10 one-score games, winning 6 of those, losing 4. Not bad for a first-time head coach. And against quality opponents, they face 14 quality opponents, won 5 of them. So you're looking at about a 36% win rate there. As far as fourth down aggressiveness, Kenny Dillingham is one of the more aggressive head coaches, ranking 26th. Arizona State has attempted 19 fourth downs on the season. They're converting about 53% on third downs. Let's take a look at Chris Kleiman, the head coach for K-State there. 21 games since the start of last season, 15-6. That's a 71% win rate. In close game situations, K-State 4-5 in one score contest, 44% win rate. And against quality opponents, 9 wins in the 14 games where he's faced the quality opponent, 64% win rate. As far as being aggressive on fourth down, we're seeing Coach Kleiman kind of in the middle of the pack there, as he's attempted 14 fourth downs, and looks like they're converting. Oh, bear with me here as I pull that number here. Okay, so fourth down. There we go. All right, 15 attempts, converted 9 of them. That's a 60% conversion rate there. So I apologize for the momentary delay there. Just waiting for that graphic to pop up on the other screen here. Okay, so looking at how this matchup is shaping up, let's give some more thoughts here on this contest. We got a betting line at 9 opening, and okay, can see that. All right, final thoughts on this contest. Overall, both teams, like I said, enter this contest with a 7-2 record. K-State's balanced offense and strong defensive metrics, especially against the run, position them as a stronger contender in this matchup. Arizona State will need to leverage its passing game to exploit that K-State defensive vulnerabilities there in the secondary. I think this game is going to hinge on K-State's ability to contain that Arizona State offense while executing a balanced offense to wear down that Arizona State defense. The betting markets show confidence in Kansas State, pointing to the anticipated home victory if they're able to maintain their recent form here over the past few weeks. Our next contest, we will head to beautiful Annapolis, Maryland, as we find the Midshipmen of Navy taking on the Tulane Green Wave. All right, our next matchup is the Tulane Green Wave heading up to beautiful Annapolis, Maryland to face the Midshipmen of Navy. Folks, I'm always going to love this contest. Any chance I get to break down one of the 3 service academies that play football, always a pleasure to do so. And what we're seeing here in this matchup is 2 teams, both out of the American Conference, still have hopes of getting to that conference championship game. Both teams coming in with just 2 losses on the season. Tulane, 8-2 on the year, will be squaring off against a 7-2 Navy team. For a matchup between 2 high-performing teams with distinct playing styles, Tulane's balanced offense meets that Navy formidable rushing attack. While both teams bring in a disciplined physical defense to the field, let's talk about some of the metrics before we get into the breakdown here. As we mentioned, Tulane 8-2 on the season, comes in as our 24th overall ranked team. As far as our pure power rankings go, Tulane comes in at 23rd and checks in for the first time in our playoff rankings at the number 25 spot. Now, Navy comes in 7-2, 30th overall. So just outside of our top 25 there. As far as power rankings go, they check in at number 57. And as far as our playoff committee rankings, they check in at number 32. So just outside of cracking that top 25 in the playoff rankings. With Tulane's balanced offense efficiency against that Navy rush-heavy attack, this game highlights a contest of contrasting styles. Let's dive into those key offense and defensive matchups. May take a look at recent trends, fourth down strategies, coaching philosophy that may shape the outcome of this contest. Let's start with that Tulane Green Wave offense going up against that Navy defense. Let's see how these two stack up against each other. Tulane comes in averaging 32.8 adjusted points per game. That's 26th in the nation, while its Navy defense is allowing 25.8 points per game. That's good for 74th in the country. This Tulane offense may find opportunities to score against that Navy, beyond that Navy's defensive average. Let's talk about the passing game here. Tulane passing game average game ranks 85th with, let's round it up to 198 yards adjusted passing yards per game. They're going to face a Navy defense that has allowed 252 yards passing per game, 113th. Tulane could exploit that Navy secondary with well-timed passes. I want you to bear in mind, what was the forecast that Summer gave you for this contest? Got some wind gust in this ball game. Keep that in mind as I continue on with the breakdown here. Tulane's rushing attack, 11th best in the country, 228 yards adjusted rushing on the season, while its Navy defense is allowing 187 yards per game on the ground. It's 97th. Tulane's potent rushing attack could capitalize on this Navy average rushing defense. Let's talk about the third down conversion, because this is where if you got some concerns about this ball game, this is one of the areas where you should focus in on. Tulane converts 49.2% on third downs. That's not a coincidence here, folks, that I'm bringing this up, because Navy allows their opponents to convert 49% on third downs. Tulane's consistency on first and second down could allow them to set up some very manageable third down situations. That could be a deciding factor in Tulane's ability to extend drives in this ball game. Let's take a look at that midshipman offense versus that Green Wave defense. Navy comes into this game scoring 30 points per game. That's good for 41st best in the country. While this Tulane defense is allowing 22.3 points per game. That's 51st in the nation. Navy may face some challenges reaching their scoring average against this Tulane resilient defense. Now, we know this Navy passing attack hasn't been the most potent, but let's take a look at what the numbers show us for this matchup. Navy's passing game ranks 127th with 137 yards passing per game. This Tulane Green Wave defense is allowing their opponents 184 yards passing per game. That's 33rd. Navy's limited passing attack is unlikely to significantly impact Tulane's solid secondary, but they're able just to hit some short passes, especially if we're having some wind issues in this ball game. You want to just hit some quick curls, some quick hooks, some quick slants. You don't want that ball hanging up in the air for a long time with potential wind gust here in this contest. Now, this Navy ground game, true to form for what we're used to seeing out of the service academies. Navy ranks 4th in rushing yards, 250 yards per game on the ground, while this Tulane defense does allow their opponents 149 yards rushing per game. That's good for 53rd. This matchup gives Navy a prime opportunity to control the tempo through the run game, and they'll need to do so. Let's take a look at what Navy does on third down. Navy converts 35.5% on third downs. Tulane is allowing only 30% on defense. Navy's struggles on third downs could be a limiting factor against this Tulane strong third down defense. I expect Navy to try to take advantage early on in first and second down, setting up some very convertible third and possibly fourth down situations here. Speaking of fourth downs, let's look at the coaching style and fourth down analysis for this contest. Tulane head coach John Summerall. Like this coach a lot, folks. In a couple of years, he may be in line for a bigger opportunity. Let's let him kind of maturate there at Tulane just a little bit more. Since the beginning of last season, Coach Summerall has coached 23 games. He's 19-4 in those contests. In close games, Tulane's been in Coach Summerall teams have been in 6 one-score games. He's 4-2 in those contests. In games against quality opponents, 7 of those contests, he's 3-4. It's about a 43% win rate in those contests. Let's take a look at how aggressive these coaches are on fourth down. Pardon me, I kind of jumped the gun there with the skip along there. Let's see, where did I leave off? Okay. Coach Newberry, Brian Newberry, head coach for the Navy midshipmen. Coach Newberry, since the start of last year, 21 contests. He's 12-9 in those contests. Very solid there. In one-score games, he's been in 3 of those. He's 1-2 in those contests. 33% win rate. And against quality opponents, he's 0-6 against quality opponents. Now, let's take a look at some fourth down numbers here. Coach Summerall, this year has gone for it on fourth down 12 times, converted 5 of them, 42%. Navy converted 10 out of 13. That's 77%. So if it's close on third down, close on fourth down, expect Navy to go for it. And they've done a great job of those 4th and 1, 4th and 2 situations. So especially with weather in play, I think that Navy is going to be even more so aggressive in this contest. Some final thoughts on this ball game. This game appears to favor Tulane, given their recent performance, their efficient offense, being disciplined on defense. Navy's strength in the rushing game could be the key to this game staying close if they're able to maintain long drives and prevent Tulane from controlling the tempo. That's how Navy stays in this game for all 4 quarters, and expect them to be a little bit more aggressive, especially since we're talking about a potential for weather in this contest. All right, let's get to our first co-game of the week, and we're going to head to the Atlantic Coast Conference here. So we're going to make this the Crunch Time Sports Advantage game of the week. We'll get to our second one here in just a moment. And in the Atlantic Coast Conference, we find the Clemson Tigers sitting there with a 7-2 record, traveling up to the Steel City to take on Pittsburgh, also sitting there with a 7-2 record. And the reason why we chose this matchup, folks, it is all because of the standings there in the ACC. Right now, with that loss that Miami has to Georgia Tech, sitting at the top of the conference, undefeated in conference play, 5-0. It's the SMU Mustangs, followed right now by the Clemson Tigers, sitting there with 6-1 record. Miami Hurricanes sit there with a 5-1 record. Louisville 4-2. Pitt 3-2. So if we look at the rest of the conference schedule here for Miami, Miami's off this week. In 2 weeks, they face Wake Forest at home, and then they close out a game in the Carrier Dome, because that's still what I'm going to call it, the Carrier Dome against Syracuse. Let's take a look and see what Clemson has remaining as far as conference play. We're not going to count that game against the Citadel next week. They have this game against Pitt to close out their ACC conference slate. So with a win here for Clemson, that could put them in line for an ACC title game. We'll see how all of the tiebreakers shake out. But right now, Clemson's sitting in a very good position. And then let's take a look at Pitt, since they're the other team in this contest. They have 2 conference games remaining after this game this week against Clemson. They got a road trip to Louisville, very pivotal game if they're able to get past this game this week. If so, that's going to be on the big show next week. And then they close out ACC play here in a couple of weeks when they travel up to Boston College. So this is why we made this one of the games of the week, and it's because of the importance there in the conference. So let's set the game context here for you, because we're gonna do a little bit deeper dive in this contest, and we'll do it also for the game of the week coming up here in just a moment. Clemson, as I mentioned, 7-2, and Pitt 7-2, meeting in a very exciting ACC clash where both teams looking to make a statement in this contest. Let's start with the visiting team, the Clemson Tigers. Overall ranking for us, they check in at number 18. Very strong in the power rankings. They check in at number 19. In our playoff rankings, they check in at number 18. Pitt, we've seen Pitt struggle here over the past few weeks. We'll get into that here in just a moment. But Pitt checks in 21st overall ranking. They're 39th in our power rankings, and then as far as our playoff committee rankings, we have Pitt checking in at number 27. Clemson boasts a high-powered offense that has shown both explosiveness and efficiency here over the past few weeks, while this Pitt Panther team brings in a balanced offense but has faced some inconsistencies. Both defenses are solid in this matchup, making this matchup highly competitive. Let's get into the in-depth offensive and defensive breakdowns. We're going to look at their recent form here over the past 4 weeks of the season. We'll throw out any buys. So if there's a buy for either team, they'll only have 3 games in this last 4 weeks. We'll take a look at some fourth down strategies and some coaching styles for this matchup. Let's start with that Clemson Tiger offense and how they stack up against this Pitt Panther defense. Clemson comes in averaging 37.8 points per game, 6th best in the nation. This Pitt Panther defense is allowing 22.6 points per game. That's 55th as far as scoring defenses go. Clemson has a significant advantage and may exceed Pitt's defensive threshold in this ball game. If they're going to do so, let's take a look at how they're going to be able to achieve that. This Clemson passing attack, Cade Klubnik has kind of picked it up this year since that Georgia game. Klubnik on the season, 195 completions, 309 attempts, 2,275 yards passing, 24 passing touchdowns to 4 INTs. We like that performance there. Let's take a look at that Clemson passing attack. Ranks 23rd in the nation, 269 yards passing per game. Pitt defense been a little bit stingy in the passing game, only 203 yards per game allowed. That's good for 53rd. Clemson should be able to exploit that Pitt secondary with some efficient aerial attacks. What I'm looking for, some crossing routes, some intermediate passing games, and using those backs out of the backfield could bode well for the Clemson Tigers in this ball game. Let's take a look at that Clemson rushing attack. It's led by Phil Maffa. Maffa on the season, 161 carries, 981 yards on the ground, and 8 big rushing touchdowns. Like what that big fella's been doing here all season long, and really expect him to try to put on a show in this contest. The Clemson rushing attack, 18th in the nation, rushing for 213 yards per game on the ground. This Pitt defense, 139 yards rushing per game. That's good for 41st. This Clemson ground game could find some success, given their offense the balance that they need in this big-time showcase showdown in the Atlantic Coast Conference. Always, folks, I love the third down breakdowns here. Third down conversions. Clemson is converting 47% on third downs, while Pitt allows their opponents to convert at a 31% clip rate, making third downs very competitive in this ballgame. And folks, the way you play good on third downs on offense is you're really effective and efficient on first and second downs. First down play calling and execution will be the key for this Clemson Tiger offense. Now, let's flip it over. Let's talk about that Pitt Panther offense versus this Clemson defense. Pitt comes in averaging 28.6 points per game. Folks, that's good for 48th in the nation. While this Clemson defense is allowing 22.5. That's good for 54th. Pitt may find it challenging to reach their average against this Clemson resilient defense. But if they're going to do so, let's take a look at the passing game. And let's start with that fantastic transfer quarterback from the University of Alabama, Eli Holstein, freshman out of Zachary, Louisiana. Should have been a Bayou bingo, don't you think? We digress. Not really. 177 completions. 286 attempts. So 177 completions, 186 attempts, 2,174 yards passing, 17 touchdowns, turning it over just a little bit high, but 6 INTs. Not bad, but we want that touchdown to INT ratio somewhere in the 4-to-1, 4.5-to-1 range. So with 6 INTs, we would want that touchdown ratio to be closer to 30 touchdowns on the season. All right, let's get into the metrics here. Pitt's passing game ranks 43rd in the nation, 236 yards passing per game. They're going to face a Clemson defense that's allowing 189 yards passing per game. That's good for 36 in the nation. Pitt is going to face some resiliency when they try to attack this Clemson defense through the air. But they could find opportunities if that Clemson secondary has any lapses in defensive assignments and judgments here. Let's take a look at that Pitt Panther rushing attack. And it is led by Desmond Reed, the junior out of Miami Gardens, Florida, 5'8", 175. Built a little bit stronger than his frame would suggest. 118 carries, 670 yards. Does have 4 rushing touchdowns on the season. As far as this Pitt Panther ground game overall, Pitt ranks 72nd in rushing, 161 yards per game on the ground. Clemson defense is allowing their opponents 152 yards per game on the ground. That's good for 58. I think this matchup will provide Pitt some chances to establish the ground game, which will absolutely be essential to, one, control the clock, two, wear down that Clemson defense, and three, keep that Clemson offense on the sidelines watching and stewing there. Let's talk about the third down conversion rate for the Pitt Panthers. Pitt is converting 32.6% on third downs. This Clemson defense have absolutely been stout, allowing their opponents to only convert 31% on third downs. Pitt struggles on third down, could continue against this Clemson effective third down defense. If Clemson's able to get this Pitt Panther team off the field on third downs, keeping that defense fresh, you're going to give your offense extra opportunities in this ball game. Let's take a look at the coaching styles and fourth down analysis. I think this was something that we started a couple of weeks ago. You fans have really been receptive to it. We're going to add on to it just a little bit deeper here. Let's talk about Clemson head coach Dabo Swinney. In 21 contests since the beginning of last year, Coach Swinney is 15-6. That's a 71% win rate there, folks. In close game performance, Coach Swinney, in that same time period, in 5 contests, he's only 2-3. That's a 40% win rate. And against quality opponents, Clemson has struggled in the past almost year and a half here. In 10 such contests, only 4 wins, 6 defeats there for Dabo Swinney. Let's talk about fourth down aggressiveness, because this is something that bears in mind as we get deeper into the season here. Clemson Tigers go for it at a fourth down rate of 11.4%. That ranks 92nd. So you're not going to see Clemson really push the accelerator going for it on fourth downs. Now, they'll be very judicious about trying to do so. But here's something that I want you to bear in mind. In 14 attempts this season, Clemson has been able to convert on fourth downs 9 times. That's a clip rate of 64%. What are our recommendations for Clemson on fourth down? As I mentioned, Clemson has converted 9 out of 14 attempts on fourth down, while Pitt's fourth down defense, Pitt has allowed their opponents to convert 15 out of 23 attempts. That's a 64% clip rate. Our recommendation, Pitt's difficulty in defending fourth downs should give Dabo Swinney a little bit more confidence for going for it on fourth down, especially when we're talking about crossing the 50 before you get into makeable field goal range. Folks, there's a difference between getting in field goal range and makeable field goal range. You got to know what your kicker range is in the season here. Let's talk about Pat Narduzzi, head coach of the Pitt Panthers. In 21 games since the beginning of last season, he's 10-11 in those 21 games. So sits 1 game under 500. In one-score games, he's 4-3 in those contests, so about a 57% win rate. And against quality opponents, 11 quality opponents, he's won 5 of those with a win rate of 45.5% there. All right, let's talk about Coach Narduzzi's fourth down aggressiveness. He goes for it on fourth downs at a rate of 10.4%, ranking 103rd there. Pitt has attempted 10 fourth down plays, converting at a 58% clip. What are our recommendations for Pitt on fourth downs? We talked about it. Pitt has converted 7 out of 12 attempts on fourth down. That's that 58% that I just mentioned. Clemson's defense. Clemson has allowed opponents to convert 6 out of 12 attempts on fourth down. So only 50% conversion rate. What are our recommendations for Coach Narduzzi here? With Clemson's moderate fourth down defense, Narduzzi should be selective if he's going to go for it on fourth down attempts, focusing on short yardage scenarios that's going to maximize their chance for success. Also, you got to know which plays you're going to call before that situation arrives. So before each drive, I'm Coach Narduzzi, I'm talking to my offensive coordinator. I'm telling him to make sure that he's got a 4th and 1 or our best 2-point play conversion play in his back pocket, ready to go to it. So we're not having to waste a timeout. We're not having to do anything of that sort, and we can just get on the ball and go. Let's take a look at Clemson's last 4-week analysis. This is something new for the podcast. We're unveiling it this week because we wanted to give you a little bit deeper analysis. So let's get into the last 4 weeks analysis for Clemson. Played 3 games. They had a bye week in week number 9. So that's why they've only had 3 games in that 4-week stretch. Their opponents, Virginia Tech, power ranked 26th, Louisville, power ranked 15th, and Virginia, power ranked 63rd. So it gives you an idea of the quality of opponents that they face. This Clemson offense in the last 3 contests, averaging 31 points per game. Folks, listen to this total offense here. Let's round it up, 456 yards per game, 261 through the air, 194 on the ground. Now the penalties, a little bit high on the penalties, 22 penalties in those last 3 games for 200 yards, but has done a great job of taking care of the ball, only 2 turnovers. Let's take a look at that Clemson defense. Allowing 26 points per game in their last 3 contests. 313 yards of total offense allowed to their opponents. 207 through the air, 106 on the ground. Opponents have really struggled to run against this Clemson defense as of late. Clemson has also forced 4 turnovers in these last three contests. Clemson's offense has been productive in the last 4 weeks. We talked about it, only 3 games, with a balanced attack averaging over 450 yards per game. Defensively, Clemson is allowing 26 points per game, but has been very effective against the run. However, their pass defense has shown a little bit of vulnerability, which could be a factor against this Pitt Panther passing attack. Let's take a look at Pitt over the last 4 weeks. Also 3 contests, had that bye week in week number 8. They've also faced Virginia, a very good SMU team, and then a Syracuse team that power ranks at number 62. This Pitt Panther offense over that stretch is scoring 28 points per game. Total offense, 321 yards of total offense. So not as explosive over these past few weeks. 220 yards passing, 101 yards rushing. Have committed 20 penalties for 169 yards. Turned the ball over 4 times here in the past few weeks. Let's talk about that Pitt Panther defense over the past few weeks. Folks, they've been giving up points quite a bit. 28.3 points per game in the last three games. 378 yards of total offense, 266 through the air, 112 on the ground. They have forced 7 turnovers. We remember that Syracuse game where they were forcing turnovers like apple cart. 5 turnovers they forced in that ball game. So out of the 7 that they forced in the last 4 weeks, 5 of them came in that one contest. Now they did have 2 last weekend against Virginia. Wasn't able to turn over SMU in that contest, though. All right, this Pitt Panther offense has been inconsistent, averaging 321 yards per game, as I mentioned. Limited rushing production. Their defense has been vulnerable, averaging their opponents to run up 378 yards per game, and especially against the pass, which could be exploited by this Clemson Tiger passing attack. Let's give some final thoughts on this contest. I expect Clemson to be successful both in the run game and the pass game against Pitt. Got to make sure that they manage the penalties and manage the turnovers in this contest. I expect a hard-fought ball game that could get us into the fourth quarter, with that score being within a one-score contest in this matchup. All right, folks, 4 games down, 1 to go. Let's get into our game of the week.
In Las Vegas, victory lane for Fox Television. Ricky Bobby, today's big winner. A heck of a win for you today, but it seems as if you either win or crash the car trying to win.
Well, Dak, here's the deal. I'm the best there is, plain and simple. I mean, I wake up in the morning, I piss excellence, and nobody can hang with my stuff. I'm just a big, hairy American winning machine. If you ain't first, you're last. You know what I'm talking about? That phrase is trademark, not to use the other position of Ricky Bobby.
All right, we got to go with a little Ricky Bobby because there will be some shaking and baking in this ball game. Well, first, let me talk about the Matlock and Julie Balls to the Wall game of the week. You can find my friends Matlock and Julie Balls on We Are Sports Radio down on the beautiful Emerald Coast each weekday, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Central Time. Once again, that website is wearesportsradio.com. Matlock and Julie Balls host a fantastic college football show each and every weekday. Just an honor and a privilege for me to be able to join 2 of my best friends in this business. You can catch me doing 2 segments on Wednesday and Friday at the top of the 10 a.m. hour segment there. So once again, you can follow them on Twitter at Matlock850 Radio. They're also on Facebook, and I'll give out the website one more time. It is wearesportsradio.com. They're in beautiful Pensacola, Florida. So Matlock, Julie Balls, this is the Balls to the Wall game of the week. Let's not waste any time. Let's get into this matchup. Can I get a little music to get me into this one? Used to love this game being on CBS, and now with it moving over to ESPN, this game is going to be in prime time there. And let's get into this matchup, folks, because we got a lot to break down in this contest, and I don't want to delay getting into it. So Tennessee, Georgia, the stakes could not be higher for this contest. Tennessee comes in with an 8-1 record, sitting at a tie for the SEC conference right now with a 5-1 record, along with Texas A&M at 5-1. Texas sits there with a 4-1 conference record. Georgia, coming off of their second conference loss last weekend to Ole Miss, sits there with a 5-2 record. Ole Miss sits there with a 4-2 record, and Alabama, off of their dominating performance in Baton Rouge, sits there with a 4-2 record. Folks, we're running out of time to decide Who's going to go to Atlanta to play for the SEC title game? Nobody can afford a loss right now in conference. So that's why this game carries the significance that it does. Not only conference championship game, but also making the college football playoffs. We saw the standings there with where both teams sit. Neither team can really feel locked in as far as making the college football playoffs. So taking care of business on Saturday will be absolutely important for both teams. We do have some injury updates for you. For the University of Tennessee, we know that their quarterback, Nico, was knocked out of that ball game last weekend against Mississippi State with a concussion. We can verify that. Here's the latest update that we have on Nico's availability. We expect him to be a go in this ball game. Coach Heupel has said that Nico has been in a good place this week. He was able to practice on Monday, which if he was really deep in the concussion protocol, there's no way that he would have been able to be on the field Monday and in the meeting rooms. I'm kind of familiar with the concussion protocol from the NFL. College, for the most part, has tried to adapt some of those same standards. You need to be symptom-free before you can really start to ramp up as far as practice go. He was also able to practice yesterday on Tuesday as we're recording this on Wednesday afternoon. So we know the injury report will come out, the first injury report or availability report for college will come out later tonight. We will keep an eye on that, but we want to go ahead and get the podcast out. And if we need to make any adjustments to it, what we'll do is give us a follow on Twitter at CrunchTime VIP. We'll give an update if there needs to be one. For the University of Georgia, one of the best interior offensive linemen in the SEC, Tate Rutledge, having some issues with that ankle that he had repaired a few weeks ago. Came back. He was limited last week. His availability is questioned for this contest. So two big players on offense for both teams. We have some injury concerns. So neither team really out of the woods. And we know once we get to this part of the season, a lot of guys are playing through some injuries, and we'll see just what their availability will be. All right, so let's get into the game context here, and let's take a look at the Tennessee Volunteers. Tennessee, as I mentioned, 8-1 record. They are our number 8 overall ranked team in college football right now. Their power ranking for us, we have them at 11th. Coincidentally, that's exactly where we have them in our college football playoff rankings, also at number 11. The Georgia Bulldogs, 7-2, 14th overall, 8th in our power rankings, and 12th in our college football playoff rankings. Both teams boast formidable defenses and balanced offensive units, making this matchup critical in their respective seasons. Tennessee's consistency as far as being able to run the ball will be tested against this Georgia highly ranked rush defense, while this Georgia high-powered passing game will encounter a Tennessee defense that has excelled in stopping the pass. Let's get into this in-depth offensive and defensive matchup breakdown for both teams. We're going to look at their recent form, kind of like what we did in the previous game with Clemson and Pitt. Going to talk about the coaching styles and strategies for this ball game. Let's get into it. For the visiting Tennessee Volunteers, folks, Josh Heupel doing a fantastic job this year. Needs to get this win over Georgia because University of Tennessee has been dominated since Kirby Smart took over as the head dog there in Athens. Since losing his first year to the University of Tennessee, has not lost to the University of Tennessee since that first game back in 2016. So Georgia on quite a long winning streak. We saw Tennessee just a couple of years ago put another long losing streak to another rival with the University of Alabama, ending a 15-year drought. So Tennessee, you've ended one drought. You need to end this one for a lot of reasons. I'll get into that at the end of the matchup. Let's start with that Tennessee offense. Tennessee comes in averaging just a tick below 30 points per game. Folks, that's 43rd in the nation. This Georgia defense, scoring defense, has been phenomenal. No question about it. Allowing only 11 points per game. That's third best in the nation. Tennessee may struggle to reach their scoring average against this Georgia elite scoring defense. Let's talk about the passing game. Now, we're gonna give this as if Nico is playing. So let's talk about what Nico has done on the season. 144 completions, 221 attempts, 1,879 yards, 11 touchdowns, 4 INTs. Need you to take better care of the football, young man, when you're putting it up in the air with only 11 touchdowns. We need those INTs to be about 1 or 2. Talked about that touchdown to INT ratio here quite a bit. Let's take a look at that Tennessee passing attack. Tennessee's passing game average, 206 yards per game. It's good for 73rd in the nation. Georgia defense is allowing just 174 yards passing per game. That's good for 22nd in the country. And I'm just taking a quick peek at something really quickly. Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure of. Okay, back into it. Okay, Georgia's strong secondary could limit Tennessee's effectiveness in the air, potentially forcing them to rely even more so on the ground game. Speaking of that ground game, folks, the best running back in the Southeastern Conference plays there in Rocky Top. Dylan Sampson. Love this young man a lot. And this running back, junior, 5'11", 200 pounds, right there in LSU's backyard in Baton Rouge. How did he escape and get all the way to Knoxville? Those are questions that a head coaching staff should be asking at this point. Sampson, 201 carries, 1,129 yards, 20 touchdowns. Ladies and gentlemen, every 10 carries, this young man has found his way to the end zone. That kind of ratio should get you an invite there to New York for a Heisman Trophy ceremony. Not saying he should win it, but an invitation should definitely be warranted. Tennessee ranks 27th in the nation with just a tick under 200 yards rushing per game. They're going to face a significant challenge here against this Georgia Bulldog rush defense that's only given up about 80 yards per game on the ground. That's top best in the country right now. The Tennessee rushing attack may struggle to break through that Georgia's formidable defensive front, potentially limiting their offensive flexibility. Let's talk about the third down situation here, folks, because I think I can't overemphasize this enough for this matchup. Tennessee converts 44.7% on third downs. This Georgia defense allows their opponents just 21.3% conversion rate, one of the lowest rates in the country. Tennessee may find it challenging to sustain drives against this Georgia highly effective third down defense. Let's go back and look at something last week because there may be some data for this Georgia defense against Ole Miss. Ole Miss really struggled on third downs as well last week. 4 for 13 in that contest. Folks, 4 out of 13 is a very low conversion rate. You're talking about 31% there. So that's well below what Tennessee is converting on third down. So Tennessee, you need to be solid on first down and second down, not only with your play calling, but with your execution. You don't want to be in third and long against this Georgia defense because they are extremely stout on third downs getting off the field. Let's take a look at that Bulldog offense against that Tennessee defense. Georgia comes in averaging 33 points per game. It's 22nd in the country, while this Tennessee defense is only allowing 10 points per game. That's second best in the country. Georgia will face a tough challenge in trying to reach their scoring average in this contest. Let's go back to that Ole Miss game once again for this Georgia offense. Georgia, and I'll go ahead and speed it up just a little bit. Georgia had a difficult time running against Ole Miss last weekend. 32 attempts, 60 yards, 1.9 yards per rush attempt. We'll get into that just a little bit more here, but I want to go ahead and foreshadow just how difficult that was. And only scoring 10 points last week, that could be problematic. Let's look at that Georgia passing attack. And when we just look at purely the passing yards, this is one of the most prolific passing attacks in college football. 301 yards passing per game. That's 10th best in the country. While the Tennessee defense is allowing 162 yards passing per game. That's good for 13th best in the country. Georgia's passing game might find success, though Tennessee's strong pass defense could limit those explosive plays that the Georgia Bulldogs have absolutely lived off of this year through the passing game. Folks, let's talk about the quarterback for Georgia in this matchup. Carson Beck. Let's just take a look at the numbers. We'll get into the breakdown here in just a minute. On the season, Carson Beck, 210 completions, 321 attempts, 2,488 yards. Folks, this is the heartbreaking number here for Georgia fans. 17 passing touchdowns. He's already gotten 12 INTs. That is barely a 1.2 to 1 turnover touchdown to INT ratio. Folks, for a guy that has started as many games as Carson Beck, that is problematic for me. When we're talking about a quarterback who came into this season as one of the highest rated draft prospects at the quarterback position. He's seen that take a little bit of a nosedive. He has an opportunity to kind of clean that up down the stretch, but he's got to start playing well. He's got to start playing well Saturday night there in his home stadium. Let's take a look at that ground attack. And Trevor Etienne, the transfer from the University of Florida, has struggled to run the ball this year. And I'm putting struggle in very bold print and underlining it. 95 carries, 477 yards, just 7 touchdowns on the season. Folks, we've watched the Georgia Bulldogs for a long time now. For them not to have a running back that's going to even sniff 1,000 yards is as big of a head scratcher as we're going to see in college football. This is a program that knows how to run the ball, and for them to struggle as badly as they're struggling, that is a concern for me. Let's get into the numbers and let's amplify why I have that concern. Georgia averages 140.5 yards rushing per game. That is 93rd in the nation. So if we extrapolate this out, being 93rd in the nation means that your run game is about a middle of the pack group of 5 team. So you're not even a bottom power 4 team being able to run the ball. You're one of the worst rushing offenses in all of college football. Words that I never thought I would say about the Georgia running attack. They're going up against a Tennessee rush defense that allows 105 yards per game. This Tennessee solid rush defense will absolutely restrict that Georgia ground game. And if you want any more metrics to that, I'll go back and reference that number once again from last week against the University of Ole Miss. 32 carries, 60 yards, 1.9 yards per attempt. Now, we know that defensive front there for Ole Miss is the bell cow of their team. Folks, this Tennessee defensive front is no joke. I expect Georgia to absolutely struggle to run the ball in this ball game, putting it all on Carson Beck's shoulder. I'll get to that here in just a moment. Let's talk about third down conversions here. Georgia converts third downs 45.3%. This Tennessee defense allows 24.2%. Georgia may find some success in sustaining drives, but that Tennessee third down efficiency makes it extremely challenging. And when you're talking about an offense that is truly one-dimensional, if Tennessee is able to stop Georgia from having first down success when they do run the ball, it's going to put that Georgia defense, that Georgia offense in third and long. And that's when you see this Tennessee defense really start to pin their ears back and start to try to tee off on Carson Beck there. And a young man that we've highlighted going into the season who's starting to play a little bit up to his draft potential, and that is James Pierce Jr., folks. He's the absolutely alpha of that defense. If he's able to create some havoc in this ball game, advantage Tennessee there, because I haven't been impressed with what I've seen from the Georgia tackles there thus far. Okay, let's talk about some keys here for both offenses. And I'm going to go back to Tennessee here for just a moment as I pull that up here. So just bear with me for a moment. I'm going to give a key to Tennessee's offense here. It's how well can you run the ball against Georgia. Let's go back and take a quick peek here at what Ole Miss was able to do on the ground against this Georgia defense. And folks, I'm going to ask you to pay attention to a couple of numbers here. 35 attempts, 133 yards, 3.8 yards per rush attempt. The way that you wear down this Georgia defensive front is not by breaking the long run. Give Kirby Smart a lot of credit there. They're fundamentally sound in that aspect. But what you want to do is you want to grind them down slowly. And once they get to a certain number of plays, defense gets a little bit tired. You start arm tackling instead of wrapping up a ball carrier, whether it's a running back or a wide receiver. That's when you start to see some big plays there for Tennessee. Going to give a key for the University of Georgia as well as on offense. We know that you're going to struggle trying to run the ball here. But you got to stick with the ground game here. You can't become one-dimensional against this Tennessee pass rush. So here's what I'm going to suggest to offensive coordinator Mike Bobo. Get out of 4 wide receivers or what we like to call 10 personnel. Get out of 11 personnel, 3 wide receivers, tight end, running back in the backfield. You got to get into some bigger personnel. Now, because most teams don't have that traditional fullback on the roster, you want to see Georgia in 12 personnel in this ball game. 2 wide receivers, 2 tight ends, one back. Now, I'm going to just diagram a play for you and just follow with me. I'm not going to call it the way an offense would call it. I'm just going to call it by the personnel group. So we're in 12 personnel. We got the tight end lined up exactly next to the right tackle. Okay, off the line of scrimmage, we have tight end 2, or what we're going to call the H back here, because he's going to be our move tight end. He's lined up right behind that tight end that's on the line of scrimmage. The back is right behind Carson Beck in the gun. Now, here's what we want to do. We want to motion that H back across the formation to the left side. And he's going to be right, his right foot is going to be almost perfectly aligned with the left tackle. So he's not going to be on the line of scrimmage, although he could be, but we're going to flex him just off of the line of scrimmage. Now, you've given the look of now a balanced offensive line, or a balanced offensive formation, I should say. You have a wide receiver on one side. You have a tight end on the left side. You also have a tight end and wide receiver on the right side. So now the defense doesn't have any indicators of where the ball is going to go. That's perfect. Now we're going to go back to an old Washington Redskins, because that's what they were in the 80s. So I'm not being insensitive here, as they're known as the Commanders now, but at the time, Washington Redskins, under legendary coach Joe Gibbs, had a great offensive line. They were called the Hogs. And one of the staple plays in that offense was what we call a power O offense. And what you're looking to do is you're going to look to pull that left guard, and you would love for it to be Tate Rutledge. But if that ankle is not full go, he's not going to be able to run this play. So it may depend here. So if you can't run it with the guard, you can run it with the center. And what you're going to do is you're going to pull either that center or guard from the left side around to the right side. That tight end that's matched up on the right side, he's gonna take the widest defensive player. Usually it's going to be a slot corner or a linebacker. He's going to block out the farthest guy to the right. You with me so far? Great. Okay, now that pulling guard or center is going to come right off of that right tackle's butt cheek. And while that right tackle's blocking down, now that pulling guard or center is going to take the most interior defensive player, whether it's a defensive end that stayed home, or he's going to get a chance to get lined up on usually a linebacker or safety. So now you got a big on a little. Your running back, if he's able to have 3 yards before he's contacted, that running back better find a way to get an additional 3 or 4 yards. That's 6 yards, folks, on the ground. May not sound like a lot, but what that does is it takes some of the pressure off of Carson Beck. Carson has had to throw the ball, and I want to make sure I get this right. So I want to take a look at his last 3 games, and I just want to see how many pass attempts this kid has had. And just as I figured, in his last 4 games against Ole Miss, 31 attempts, 40 attempts against Florida, 41 attempts against Texas, and 48 attempts against Mississippi State. He's averaging well north of 40 attempts per game. Your quarterback is going to make mistakes when you're forcing him to be the entire offense. And because Georgia has not been able to have any semblance of a running game, that's one of the reasons why you see Carson Beck pressing and forcing the ball into some windows that he should absolutely not be throwing it into it. Now, I've put some blame on Carson, but now I'm putting the pressure on offensive coordinator Mike Bobo. It is your job as the offensive coordinator to make the game easier for your quarterback. And Mike Bobo has not been able to do that here. So, Mike Bobo, take the play that I just diagrammed and expand off of it. Now you can get some bootleg. You can get some waggle to where now that wide receiver on the right side can come cross the field, or as my coach here in Tennessee would say, Coach Matt would say, that wide receiver now can run transcontinental, basically coming across the railroad tracks, and that's the hash marks, from one side to the other in a vacated area. If it's zone, wide receiver, sit your butt down in a hole, present your numbers on the front of your jersey to your quarterback so he can hit you, and there's not any miscommunication. If it's man-to-man, every wide receiver should be taught to continue to run through the defense. If it's zone, you sit your butt in the hole and you just present your numbers, and the quarterback should be smart enough to find you in that window and hit you with no problems. We've seen some of that breakdown with Georgia this year. All right, folks, let's get into the brass tacks here. Let's talk about coaching style. Let's talk about some fourth down analysis for both coaches here. Let's start with the visiting head coach there in Josh Heupel. Coach Heupel, since the start of last year, has coached 21 contests. He's 16 and 5 in those games. 76% win rate. So 16 wins, 5 losses in his last 21 contests. Tennessee in one-score contest under Coach Heupel over the last almost 2 years now. We're looking at, where are we at with Coach Heupel? Okay, so in one-score contest, Coach Heupel is 4-1. So good job there by Coach Heupel. Now, against quality opponents, here's where we've seen a little bit of a not great number. Not horrible, just not great. In 12 games against quality opponents, Heupel is 7-5 in those contests. Now, Coach Heupel has dialed back some of the fourth down aggressiveness. I want to bear this out, folks. He's gotten away from his roots, and now he's actually becoming a well-rounded head coach. His fourth down aggressiveness is 9.8%. That's 112th in the nation as far as coaches go. Tennessee has attempted 12 fourth downs. They've converted 8 of them. That is 66% on fourth down conversion. Our recommendation for Josh Heupel in this contest, when you look at their conversion rate, 8 out of 12, Georgia's defense is allowing their opponents to convert 47% of the time. And if you bear with me just a moment, I will get that number here. Yes. Okay, thanks, Jessica, for getting that over to me. All right, so Georgia opponents have gone for it on fourth down 19 times. They've converted 9 of those, so 47% conversion rate. Our recommendation for Coach Heupel in this contest: Tennessee may want to attempt fourth down plays in favorable field position. And I always say, from the 50-yard line to your opponent's 35, that's where you want to kind of be a little bit more aggressive. Now, let's take a look at Coach Kirby Smart. Coach Smart, since the beginning of last year, has a record of 19-3. 2 of those losses against Alabama, and then last weekend against the University of Georgia. Still winning 86% of his games over that time period. Georgia in one score games, over that same time period, you're looking at 5 one-score games, they're 3-2 in those contests. And as far as against quality opponents, 14 quality opponents, they're 11-3. We just talked about who those 3 losses have come against. That's still a win percent of almost 79%. So Kirby Smart does a fantastic job against quality opponents. This is a quality opponent. As far as fourth down aggressiveness, we've seen Kirby be a little bit more aggressive on fourth downs. 12.8%. That ranks 77th. Georgia has attempted 14 fourth down plays. Make sure I get this number correct. They have converted 11 of those. That is 7. Let's round it up to 79%. Now, here's a note. At Tennessee defense, Tennessee opponents have gone for it on fourth down 17 times. They've only allowed 5 of those conversions. That's a 29% conversion rate. Georgia needs to be very selective going for it on fourth downs, especially on short yard situations where they've struggled to run the ball, giving Tennessee an advantage as far as that goes, because if you're going to go for it on fourth down, and especially if it's more than fourth and a yard and a half, you're not really going to be able to sneak it for 2 yards. That's something to keep an eye on if you are a Georgia Bulldog fan. Let's take a look at the last 4 weeks, and let's give the last 4 week analysis here. Let's start with the visiting Tennessee Volunteers. And we have that. Yes. All right. Thank you, ladies. All right. So last 4 opponents for Tennessee: Mississippi State last week, Kentucky, and Alabama. Mississippi State, wow, I tried to say it that fast, 3 times fast, had a power ranking of 80th. Kentucky 43rd, Alabama top 5 as far as the power ranking goes. Tennessee has averaged 28.3 points per game on offense, 233 yards passing, 213 yards rushing, 26 penalties over the last 3 contests, 222 yards of penalties, have turned the ball over 5 times in their last 3 contests. As far as that Tennessee defense, Tennessee's defense is allowing 16.3 points per game, 174 yards passing, 141 yards rushing. They've also forced 7 turnovers in the past 3 contests. Tennessee's balanced offense and defensive play has been consistent, especially that ground attack, which has shown strong averages. Defensively, Tennessee has contained off opponents well, limiting points, forcing turnovers, which could create challenges for the University of Georgia. Now, let's take a look at Georgia in their last 3 games. They've had a bye as well in that 4-week stretch. Ole Miss, Florida, and Texas. So 2 top 10 teams, and Florida right around the 30th as far as the power rankings go. So Georgia has been battle tested over the last month of the year. Last month of the season, I should say. Offense averaging 24.7 points per game, 223 yards passing, 104 yards rushing, 16 penalties for 146 yards. But here's been the problem. Georgia has turned the ball over 9 times, and it's been 3 times in all 3 contests over the last 4 weeks. Don't forget they had that bye, so that's why I say 4 weeks, but only 3 games. Okay, so Georgia's defense averaging 21 points per game allowed. So you don't see a lot of margin between what they've scored and what they've allowed. Right around right around 4 points per game. The pass defense for Georgia has given up 202 yards passing, 92 yards per game rushing. So that rushing defense has still been stout, and they forced 7 turnovers. Our conclusion for the Georgia Bulldogs over this stretch. The Georgia passing offense has been strong, though they've had some inconsistencies on the ground, and we've talked about that ad nauseum. Defensively, Georgia has allowed more passing yards than usual, potentially opening up opportunities for this Tennessee aerial attack. However, their rush defense remains a consistent strength. Overall predictions for this ball game. We're not going to give a score in this, but we're just going to give a final thought here. Georgia's versatile passing game will likely challenge this Tennessee defense, while Tennessee's ground control could keep this game competitive. Tennessee's balance in recent form could help them capitalize on Georgia's recent defensive lapse in the air. The home field and defensive consistency may tilt this game in Georgia's favor, but they have to take care of the ball. Cannot have another 3 turnover performance in this ball game. Another couple of quick games that we're going to keep an eye on this weekend. And one of those such contests, we're going to head back in the SEC here. Is that where we're going? Yeah, let's go. No, let's go to the Big 12 game first. Kansas versus BYU. We know BYU's coming off of that emotional high of beating their rival. We also saw Kansas look really good last weekend. If Kansas is able to get Jalen Daniels to not turn the ball over and get that ground game going with Mr. Neal there, this game, folks, the point spread in this contest is only BYU favored by 2.5 points. So we could see a big game out of Devin Neal, the 5'11" senior running back right there playing in his hometown in Lawrence, Kansas. Another game we're going to keep an eye on, and that is the Texas-Arkansas game. Now, point spread in this one currently sits with Texas as a 13.5 point favorite. Want to see if Texas can put together 4 solid quarters of offense, defense, and special teams in this contest. If they're able to do so, you could see Texas cover that spread in Fayetteville. As we wrap up the show, I want to say thank you to my fantastic team here at the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network. Summer, Jessica do a fantastic job of doing all of the hosting duties, as well as Billy does a fantastic job with all of the betting handicap analysis. This is Kenneth signing off as the senior analyst and founder of this great company, and I'm blessed to be working with some of the best people in this business. Have a great week 12. We'll see you back here very soon as we'll break down our latest installment of the college football playoff rankings. If we're able to get a jump on that this weekend, that may be in your feed on Sunday night, but if not, it'll be in its usual time slot on Monday night. So have a great week 12. We'll see you back on the big show a week from today. And as always, enjoy some college football and God bless.